Hello, hello. Welcome to the 10th episode already of our SaaS show. We're both in a very nice atmosphere. Jimmy, you're on your roof. Your roof terrace, I think. I'm pretending to be
Correct.
outside, but I'm not. And that's exactly what I want to talk about. I mean, we missed some weeks because of you were on holiday and I was on holiday. And that made that we simply didn't have the time to record. When I came back, actually, this Monday, it was even harder than ever to come back because in the past, when you would go on holiday, of course, some stuff changed in our industry, but it will not be dramatic. Maybe you missed some library that came out. But now you come back and there's so many things that changed. How do you cope with that?
I guess you don't, right?
I don't
I
know.
guess it's about accepting that there's so much changing that you can't keep up anymore. And I think I was talking about it with somebody else as well who came back from holiday. He was like, "Oh shit!" I think it was a colleague of ours. He was like, coming back from holiday, and I like the feeling he had missed out on so many things. I guess that's exactly the feeling you're talking about as well. I think coping wise, I think what is important, and we have it here at Made with Love, and I hope other people or have it at their companies as well, is if you have a team that, and you have an internal knowledge sharing platform or whatever it is, that is a big win because they will filter through everything that comes in and the most important things will surface, right? So even last week we had a couple of blog and posts about some new things that were introduced. People tried it out and gave their conclusions. So I think that's a big win. For example, I think somebody did paperclip recently. I think it's the one where you can orchestrate all your agents to get into a mini company, and then he had like a conclusion. Yeah, it's not in a great state just yet, or it's not that usable yet for anything we want to do. So I think that keeps us on our toes without having to sift through all of the stuff that comes in. So
Because it's a constant battle, of course. And for me, I opened Claude on Monday morning, right after being away for a week.
I
And
bet you
maybe
tried the design cloud design immediately. No,
yeah, that I saw, of course, because you filter through some news, right, while you're on holiday. But there's like the small details that change in these tools that you don't necessarily notice unless you're working with the tools daily. Like, for example, in Yannick, our marketing guy, was showing me the cloud agents stuff. I think it's already it's on a cloud platform, so it's not in the cloud app. Probably it has been around for a while, but I totally missed it.
hmm
Maybe it's not around for a while. I don't know actually when it was announced. For example, also in the cloud app itself, there was like some other stuff that popped up that I didn't see before, and I think it's crazy how quickly these things are changing. And even in stupid tools, not only in AI tools. For example, we use Harvest as our time tracking tool. Also, there is new stuff coming out every week now because basically people can ship a lot faster and it's a lot harder to keep up with these things. So I found this report that they made. I don't know if they even announced it somewhere where they did like something very boring, but it's really we can see now for each customer how much they are behind on payments, which is a view which is very nice, but it didn't exist before. And I just stumbled upon it. I think it's becoming a lot harder, and why I want to bring it up is actually internally we're taking a small tool to cope with this. I don't know if you tried it, but we're making a tool where basically we combine a lot of different input sources that generates a daily or weekly digest that lists like the changes of the tools that you're interested in. And it combines GitHub and email feeds at the moment, but we also want to RSS feeds and stuff like that. And I think it's probably a good way to keep up with these kind of things. And maybe at one point in time we will make it available for others as well. But I think it's interesting.
I think to add two comments there. If you know which tool you're going to be using, I think following up on the newsletter, what has changed is has become a lot more important. They become so frequent. You see, like every week we get a letter or an email rather from Anthropic, with the changes. So they're very relevant. So you have to read it. Like sometimes you have tools where like, well, I don't really care what they have done, but for these tools, they're very relevant. And then the second thing is indeed having like next to an internal like sharing platform, knowledge sharing platform, some kind of form of ecosystem watch. I think that's very valuable as well. And I think we're working on an internal tool, but nowadays, I recently Notion has agents now as well, so you can it can be as simple as setting up a database in Notion, ask your development team or even your whole company, like what are typical
Yeah, that's a good
websites
idea.
or you follow, and you just ask, okay, give me the resume of the last three posts there. So you can do it very simply, but indeed, it's
Makes
another
sense.
tool to share that.
Yeah.
coping mechanisms, right?
Yeah, exactly. Talking about news, there is some crazy stuff that happened recently, right? With breaches in Lovable, I believe, and also Anthropic or Claude sending some stuff like back to them, right?
Yeah.
Not update me on that because I'm not fully in the loop.
I think on Lovable, I think in the past their projects were public and then they changed it, but somehow somebody could have accessed, which they call it Ebola attack. I think it's a or the number one on OWASP security things. And it's basically a URL or an object that wasn't properly authorized. So you could
Yeah,
have access even though it wasn't yours. And via that way, and a security researcher found access to all the projects that were before a certain date,
crazy.
if I'm not mistaken. And then the awful thing is that he had reported it. Obviously, good. He's a good guy, a good person, rather. And he reported it, but they didn't really do anything about it, and now he exposed them. So I think that's more concerning. Like if they're proper up, like if you have a vulnerability, the closure process behind it, if that's not properly followed up, that I find even more concerning. You can have like
Absolutely.
these problems, and I think with Anthropic it is like the Claude. I think it's a Chrome plugin. There's some data being sent to an external service, and that's always a bit dubious. So I think you have to be careful with that. The good thing is that I think Anthropic is doing a good job there. I don't know, they haven't responded to it yet, or I haven't seen it yet. But on an organization level, you can configure which plugins you allow, and on an organization level, you can disconnect or disallow the Chrome plugin. So for now, I would recommend people to do that and actually really take a good look at your organization settings for Anthropic, because there's a lot you can configure there. I really like it. They're really pushing for a lot of control on that level. So,
Yeah,
but
that's cool.
it's going fast, and you will see that there will be more of these things coming out of software that isn't properly secured. It's a
Yeah,
sign of the times. It's
actually,
going to be faster.
there is this model, I always forget the name, that Anthropic created but not released yet because it's too dangerous for the name.
The Mythos model, but it
Yeah,
actually
yeah.
has been it has
Leaked. Yeah, I was going to say the same thing. They found the name of the model and they could, get access to it because of that, because they know
also
the
via some
endpoints.
URL or
Yeah,
something.
yeah,
Yeah,
yeah, yeah.
exactly.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah,
that's crazy. Huh? Yeah, yeah.
sign of
So
the times.
yeah, I think it's. I mean, people sometimes ask me like, can Google Drive be hacked? Of course it can. All right, but there, from an organization like Google, like Microsoft, you assume basically that they do a proper job. But I think with these new companies, I mean, their growth is so rapid, and of course, they need to scramble in every domain in the organization, that I think we will see more of these kind of things popping up where they didn't have the right checks and balances in place because they wanted to go so fast, and that's of
Yeah.
course a very dangerous situation. On that note, I think we can wish everyone that they can enjoy some nice weather. I guess there is a throughout Europe nice weather, and have a good week, 2 weeks, and we see each other again in 2 weeks. Yeah, thank you, Shimi.
Cheers.
Bye bye.